Hi everyone, Andrea here with Crafts on the Move. Thank you so much for joining me as I walk through the recreation of this adorable Delivering Magic A2 Christmas card featuring the Spellbinders Chimney Caper Stamp and Die set. This video was originally filmed during one of our Wednesday night Facebook live stream craft-alongs. And I'm going to take you through some of the products used and how to do the ink blending and then finally assembling the card so that you can create it as well. If you have the written instructions because you either purchased it or received it for free at a store event, I would use those for all the paper measurements and to give you the exact color of paper and supplies and tools that you will need to make this card. In order to replicate the card, you will want your basic tool supplies, some distress oxide inks, blending brushes, your die cutting machine, of course the Chimney Caper Stamp and Die set, ink block, and a few other items. If you watch the video, you will see all the tools I use, and then you can go grab them and then just watch it on replay. To get started, I did ink blend the Breeze cardstock. That is an A2 card panel, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I started with the Blueprint Sketch Oxide ink blending from the top down to about halfway down to that card panel. Next, I applied the Oxide Salty Ocean Distress ink from about 1/4 of the way from the bottom of the card panel up to the Blueprint Sketch. So you want that Salty Ocean showing mostly on the bottom portion of that card panel. And then just blend that in so those two colors are nice and smooth, or you're satisfied with your blend. And then next I will be adding the Chip Sapphire. At this point, I start blending the Chip Sapphire ink, which is the darkest blue of the oxides I use on the card. And I start at the top and work towards the bottom, but only blend that ink color to about the top 2/3 of the card. And then you're going to see I'm going to start blending in the other colors. So I'm going to swap the other colors in and out so I get a nice smooth blend and transition. I am very heavy-handed when I ink blend, and my ink pads are pretty saturated, so it makes the ink blending much quicker and smoother. Moving on to the paint splatters, I have my inked panel in a splatter box, and I'm prepping my watercolor here, as you can see, so that it is fluid enough to splatter onto the background. And I'm just going to flick some of that white paint to get some specks in the background to make it look like snow. Now it's on to adding some shimmer with Spellbinders Sparkle Splatter Effects. This has a really fun nail polish bristle on it and makes splattering super easy. Once I'm happy with all the splatters, I will set the panel aside to dry. At this point, I'm trimming down the truffle panel I have, which was initially an A2 card panel that I cut at an angle, and I want about a 1-inch width on that right side. So I'm going to trim about 3/4 of an inch off of the bottom, and then see if I need to just trim off a little bit more to make it the height that I want it. This is all personal preference. And you can see I'm just taking that panel I have cut and adjusting, seeing if I need to cut a little bit more or if it's going to work for the card I'm making. And I'm happy with the height that I've trimmed it down to. So at this point, I'm just making sure that that brown panel is just the way I want it. You can add the brown panel and then trim it flush with the edge, but I find I get a cleaner edge if I trim it first to the size I want and then add it. At this point, we're going to go ahead and add that little snow piece so that it's peeking out from behind the roof line. The border that cut that white edge on the snow or the white cardstock is included in the die set. If you think you're going to use those two end pieces and they didn't actually cut border to border when you use the die, you can just take your scissors and around those harsh edges and then add that to the roof line. You will more than likely have a little bit of overhang of the white cardstock coming off of the left and bottom of the brown cardstock roof line, and you will just cut those two edges flush with the brown roof line once you get to that step. We are on to adding the layers to the Santa's bottom. You will add the white T-shaped part first, and there are embossing lines that should be etched into the red Santa suit, and that will help you with placement for that white piece and for the black belt. It is time to add the black belt, and there is lines on the red Santa, as I mentioned earlier, that will help you for the placement of the belt. On to adding the black boot layers and the little white ankle cuffs that will be just above the boots. The last and final touch slash layer is the brushed gold belt buckle. So add that to the Santa, and then Santa is done. You can set him aside. The last and final step for the Santa and the layering is the brushed gold buckle. So you'll just add that right where the black belt is, and Santa is done. You can set it aside. We are on to assembling the chimney, and you're going to apply that brick layer die cut that is the chimney detail. You will add that to the solid cranberry chimney base. And then with those little bricks that are in Merlot, we're going to inlay some of those into the spots of that gray detailed piece to give a little depth, color, and dimension to the chimney. Time to take some of those loose bricks and inlay them into the chimney that you have prepared with the cranberry and anchor cardstock, and you scatter them however you want, or you can completely omit this step and not have it. I randomly selected some of the bricks and just inlaid them with a little bit of glue. I took the glue and added it to the cranberry and then inlaid the brick on top. I repeated this step until I was happy with the way my chimney looked, and the rest of the bricks will end up being discarded. On to adhering the glitter foam faux icicles to the chimney. I added a little bit of liquid glue behind the foam, and because of the texture of the foam, it will take a couple extra minutes for the glue to dry. Once your splatters are dry, you can go ahead and start to assemble the card. I had pre-stamped the sentiment, which the stamp comes from the Chimney Caper Stamp and Die set. I stamped it with some black ink on a 1 1/4 inch circle punch. I applied 3D foam tape behind the roofline, and then I will line that roofline up with the ink blended panel. Now that the roofline with the snow peeking out is attached to the ink blended panel, I will add the prepared chimney. I add a little bit of double-sided adhesive towards the bottom of the chimney, and then later I will tuck a little piece of foam tape behind the part that is over the blue of the card panel, but I want to tuck Santa in first, and then I'll support the chimney. Time to add Santa and the sentiment. I use double-sided adhesive to attach both pieces because the adhesive will give me a little bit of time to maneuver the two pieces. I added the sentiment first and then the Santa. Now that Santa is glued to the card, I take that little piece of double-sided foam tape, and you're going to see me tuck it in behind the chimney, and that will help support the top of the chimney. I used double-sided adhesive to add the card panel to the card base, and once you have those two pieces together, your card is done. Congratulations! If you enjoyed crafting along, please like and subscribe to the channel, and thanks for creating with me. Until next time, happy crafting!